It is time to pass the baton. That's according to James Norman, the president and CEO of Rochester's Action for a Better Community. For 25 years, Norman has continued the organization's work to provide support and opportunities to low-income residents in an effort to help families achieve and maintain self-sufficiency. As of December 31st, that work will be in someone else's hands. But before he officially steps down, Norman joins us in the studio to talk breakthroughs, challenges, and what you need to know but likely don't about our poverty crisis. James Norman, welcome. It is great to have you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Action for a Better Community, or ABC as we often call it, is a community action agency. So for those who don't know, James, how would you explain the meaning behind this agency and why these were created?
Community action agencies were created as a result of the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964, and based on that act, Lyndon Johnson declared a war on poverty, and they decided to create these organizations called community action agencies all around the country, in the urban and rural areas as well, to take a new approach to addressing the issue of poverty. And so one of the fundamental aspects of the Community Action Agency network is the engagement of the low-income population in the planning, in the conduct, and in the evaluation of programs. And so that means that you have to institutionalize that process. And so for ABC, one of 52 agencies of that kind in the state and one of 1,000 throughout the country, if no matter where you go, you look at the board of a community action agency, you have 1/3 of the board is made up of consumers, 1/3 private sector members, and 1/3 public or elected officials. And so that's an institutional part of our process. And so engaging the people that we're trying to serve is so critical. And we also have to be advocates. We have to mobilize resources. We have to try to coordinate resources. So those are some of the characteristics of community action agencies.
So let me ask you, how have you seen over the past 25 years with ABC, how have you seen the work, the perception and the issues around poverty and tackling and addressing poverty in Monroe County change?
Well, I would say in the last 25 years, I believe we made strides in regard to impressing upon the population the need to recognize poverty and to address it. Poverty is such a broad-reaching problem, such an intractable problem, that it makes people want to throw up their hands. And so ABC, in coordination with our partner organizations, are trying to show that you can make a difference if you, in fact, respond to what the legitimate needs are. You know, organizations like the Community Foundation have come out with reports in recent years to help emphasize the need for the problem to be addressed. And so I believe there's a great awareness over the years of the need to address the issue, and I believe there's a commitment to do so, as exemplified by, the announcement 2 years ago of a new county-wide or region-wide anti-poverty initiative.
So what would you say? I would imagine that when you stepped into this role 25 years ago, there were some goals that you set for yourself with ABC. Can you talk about maybe where you have seen a breakthrough over the years with ABC and the work in addressing this issue in our community?
Well, one area that we put a lot of emphasis on is early childhood education. The community has done an outstanding job in that regard. We've been a part of it, and we have expanded, our Head Start program, our EPK and UPK classrooms. We've put in, evidence-based curricula. We have enhanced our family services components. And as we measure a progress of our Head Start participants at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, at the end of the year, against various standards, we find that we are, in fact, producing children who are ready for school. The unfortunate part about it, as we all know, is that when you track those children through the elementary school process, there comes a point, 4th or 5th grade, where the advantages seem to wither away. And so that means that we need to do a lot more, in our public education system to support the gains that we're able to, provide through Head Start.
Is there something, James, that you would say you haven't been able to move the needle in the way that you would want it to?
Well, in the area of employment, we still, traditionally, if you just track the stats over the last 40, 50 years, if you look at the employment among whites versus employment among people of color, generally the unemployment rate for people of color is about twice that of whites. And if you go into some of our more impoverished neighborhoods, you have multiples of that difference. And we have not figured out a way yet, or have not, taken the will to do something about it. I think the way to address some of that is through what I would call targeted initiatives, because we have, good employment and training programs in the community, but some of them are not targeted to areas that have the greatest need. And in order to, to close the gap, to reduce the disparities, then we need to apply some of our remedies to some of the areas where there's the greatest need.
I would imagine that right now there are people watching this program in the city, in the suburbs, and in our rural communities as well, and they're thinking, we've had these initiatives, we've had these programs, we have the data, the research to show us why things are the way that they are, but why haven't they changed in a significant way in terms of the issue of poverty? What would you say to people? Because you mentioned there are people that hear this word, right, and they throw their hands up because they don't know what to do.
Sure. Well, first of all, there has to be a different viewpoint of people with low incomes. There's all kinds of mythology around poverty. Mythology such as, they don't want to work, they're not motivated, people having more children just to get more public assistance, and that the public assistance is very generous. Those are not true situations. What is true is that only about 12 to 15% of the people on public assistance are on public assistance for 5 years or longer. The majority of people on public assistance are in and out. And so when they're out, sometimes they're depending upon agencies, like ABC or other agencies to give them a hand up. So with the public assistance system, we begin to talk about more and more the issue of the benefits cliff, because as people try to make the transition, sometimes the supports that they are receiving were taken away too quickly, and sometimes they make the choice to revert back to a public assistance situation as opposed to struggling, at a minimum wage job, losing childcare and so forth. So doing something with that, I think, is a big deal, addressing that from a policy standpoint. We also have a situation where the qualifications to get into different programs are very varied. There are multiple definitions of what is poor. And so as you try to address the complex needs of a family, sometimes you can't address a need because they may qualify for this program but not that program. And even within our own organization, I have 5 or 6 different levels of qualifications, and then you multiply those level of qualifications across the community. So it makes it difficult for sometimes coordination to take place. When there is the will to coordinate, there's an interest in coordinating, it just creates a tapestry that's hard for people to navigate.
What will it take to change that? Does that come down to policy change?
Oh, that's a big that's a big policy change, because we have this thing called the federal poverty level, which is the official definition of who's poor. So we'll say that there's 45 to 50 million Americans who are poor, but we're talking about a measure that is way out of date as far as it being a representation of true levels of need. And then we have programs that are or multiples of that, 125% of poverty, 150% of poverty, et cetera. And what would help is if we could, I would call it, harmonize the eligibility guidelines and come up with a level of need that's standard across the community, and then that particular barrier to getting services and coordinating services will be gone. But that's a huge step, because there are state policies, federal policies that tie into that. So everyone has to get on the same page in order for that problem to be addressed.
Well, James, before we close, I have to ask you, what would your message be to the Rochester community in relation to the role that we all can play to become more informed and more educated concerning poverty in our region?
Well, if people need to get educated, I think starting with the reports from the Community Foundation is a good foundation, forget the pun there. And then there has to be some greater awareness of how there are issues of trauma that come into play, issues of structural racism that come into play, that make people uncomfortable talking about those things. But there's a connection between poverty and racism, and we have to be willing to face that and address that, because that itself would create new insights to how to address the issues of poverty.
Well, we are out of time, but a special thank you to my guest, James Norman. Thank you for being here. Retiring President and CEO of Rochester's Action for a Better Community. To learn more about the organization or to volunteer, go to abcinfo.org.